How does a man become one of the most powerful voices in American religion, only to face immense public challenges and yet continue preaching for decades? What legacy does someone leave behind when their name stirs both admiration and controversy? Jimmy Swaggart, the dynamic televangelist whose sermons inspired millions and whose ministry once ranked among the largest in the world, has died at the age of 90. The Family Worship Center in Baton Rouge, the very platform where Swaggart preached for over half a century, confirmed his peaceful passing at home, surrounded by family, on Tuesday morning. His death marks the end of a complicated, passionate, and widely watched chapter in American Christian broadcasting. Born on March 15, 1935, in Faraday, Louisiana, Jimmy Lee Swaggart grew up in a deeply religious Pentecostal family, while his cousins, Jerry Lee Lewis and Mickey Gilley, chose paths in rock and country music. Swaggart dedicated his life to preaching the gospel. A self-taught pianist and powerful orator, he brought revival-style evangelism into homes around the globe. He launched the Jimmy Swaggart Telecast in 1971. By the mid-1980s, it had become one of the most widely viewed religious programs in the world, airing on more than 3,000 television stations and cable outlets. His message, backed by stirring gospel music and heartfelt altar calls, reached an estimated 8 million viewers weekly. At its peak, Jimmy Swaggart Ministries generated more than $150 million annually, supported by donations, product sales, and global outreach. He was also a prolific gospel recording artist, having sold over 15 million albums, and a founder of the Jimmy Swaggart Bible College. Despite his incredible rise, the late 1980s and early 1990s were marked by personal and professional challenges that led to significant scrutiny and setbacks. Leadership within his denomination, the Assemblies of God, conducted internal reviews and ultimately separated from Swaggart's ministry due to concerns about conduct and accountability. The impact was swift and profound. His national broadcast reach diminished, donations fell, and the once massive ministry had to scale down its operations. The Bible College experienced declining enrollment, and numerous stations ceased airing his telecast. Yet even amid controversy, a devoted base of followers remained, people who believed in his message, his music, and his commitment to sharing the gospel. For many, his setbacks humanized him rather than erased him. His story became one of fallibility, perseverance, and redemption. Swaggart did not retreat from public life. In fact, he quietly rebuilt his ministry. In the 2000s, he launched the Son Life Broadcasting Network, SBN, a 24/7 Christian network that aired live services, gospel music, Bible teachings, and theological discussions. His wife, Frances Swaggart, son Dunny, and grandson Gabriel played prominent roles, making the ministry a multi-generational endeavor. His gospel music remained a cornerstone of the ministry. With over 50 albums, Swaggart's emotional piano performances and signature voice continued to inspire audiences. Songs like "There Is a River" and "He Touched Me" became anthems for believers around the world. He also remained active in publishing, authoring dozens of books and theological commentaries, most notably the Expositor's Study Bible, which became a staple in many Christian households. Jimmy Swaggart's legacy is one that defies simple labels. To many, he was a pioneer, one of the first evangelists to harness the full power of television to share a faith-based message. His preaching style, a blend of urgency and compassion, helped shape modern televangelism. To others, his story is a reminder of the need for integrity and accountability in leadership. His life sparked important conversations within the church about human weakness, spiritual resilience, and the challenges of maintaining purity in public ministry. Regardless of where one stands, Swaggart's impact is undeniable. He trained thousands of ministers, reached millions with his message, and created a global platform that remained influential for over 5 decades. In his final years, Swaggart took on a quieter role. Though battling declining health, he continued to appear occasionally on SBN, teaching from Scripture and sharing personal reflections. On July 1, 2025, he passed away peacefully at his Baton Rouge home. Plans are underway for a memorial service at the Family Worship Center, which will be streamed globally through SonLife. Religious leaders, gospel musicians, and longtime supporters have already begun sharing tributes, many describing Swaggart as the person who introduced them to faith or deepened their spiritual walk. Despite leading a ministry that once generated over $150 million per year, Jimmy Swaggart's personal net worth at the time of his death was estimated at $4.5 million, according to multiple sources, while the ministry's global infrastructure, including broadcasting networks and real estate, remained significant. Swaggart himself maintained a modest lifestyle in later years compared to his earlier prominence. Jimmy Swaggart lived a life filled with contradictions, towering public acclaim and intense personal struggle, global religious influence, and deeply human flaws. He was a man whose voice stirred multitudes and whose decisions tested the faith of many who followed him. Yet through the turbulence, the tears, and the triumphs, one constant remained. Jimmy Swaggart never stopped preaching, singing, or believing in the redemptive power of God's grace. As the world now reflects on his passing at the age of 90, what remains is not just a name, or a scandal, or even a ministry, but a complex and unforgettable story that will continue to provoke thought and stir conversation long after the lights have dimmed at Family Worship Center. For over 5 decades, Jimmy Swaggart stood as a symbol, not only of Pentecostal fire and revival, but also of the very real struggles that can follow anyone called to carry a spiritual mantle. To his supporters, he embodied the essence of second chances. To his critics, he symbolized the cautionary tale of unchecked influence. But both perspectives point to the same truth. His life meant something. Swaggart's sermons weren't just fiery. They were deeply emotional, rooted in personal conviction. Whether he was thundering against sin or sobbing over the piano while singing "There Is a River," he wasn't performing. He was confessing, repenting, pleading, and proclaiming all at once. For many, that raw vulnerability was what made him relatable. He didn't preach from a pedestal. He preached from a battlefield of his own soul. Even when his influence waned and critics grew louder, he refused to go silent. The launch of SonLife Broadcasting Network, SBN, was less about reclaiming fame and more about reestablishing purpose. Swaggart believed that God wasn't finished with him. And so, he kept going. Swaggart didn't just leave behind sermons or recordings. He left behind a family devoted to continuing the mission. His wife Frances, steadfast and ever-present, co-hosted television programs and managed ministry operations alongside him for decades. His son Donnie Swaggart and grandson Gabriel Swaggart have both carried the torch, speaking to new generations while honoring the foundation their patriarchs laid. The Swaggart family built more than a ministry. They built a multi-generational movement. It wasn't unusual to see 3 generations on stage together at Family Worship Center, blending old gospel hymns with modern worship, traditional preaching with contemporary outreach. Through this continuity, Jimmy Swaggart's message, however reshaped by time, continued to echo. And beyond blood ties, he leaves behind thousands of pastors, musicians, and missionaries who studied at Jimmy Swaggart Bible College, served in his crusades, or were simply inspired by his unwavering call to evangelize. Though his base remained in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Swaggart's influence went far beyond American borders. In countries like Nigeria, Brazil, India, and the Philippines, his broadcasts aired in homes and churches alike. In Europe, Latin America, and parts of Eastern Europe, his gospel albums were translated and played in underground churches and revival meetings. Even amid the decline of traditional television evangelism, his teachings found a second life online. On YouTube, Roku, satellite radio, and mobile apps, Swaggart's sermons and music reached younger audiences who had never seen the man in his prime, but still found truth and emotion in his words. He was not just an American preacher. He was for decades a global evangelist, with a footprint that extended across time zones and language barriers. To honor Jimmy Swaggart is to wrestle with the full weight of his legacy. Some will remember him as the man who cried publicly for forgiveness, whose ministry stumbled but stood again. Others may remember only the headlines, the controversies, the missteps. Still others, perhaps the largest group, will remember both. They will remember a man of God who, despite failings, refused to walk away from his calling. His death will likely rekindle many of the conversations that surrounded his life. What does grace mean for a public figure? Can someone lead spiritually after moral failure? How do we reconcile giftedness with weakness? And perhaps that is the greatest contribution Jimmy Swaggart left us. Not a perfect example, but a necessary discussion, one that forces us to reflect not only on leaders, but on ourselves.